now listening to the Gabba Gabba Hunt Talks podcast, where we bring you conversations with people connected to the Carolinas underground music scene. Hey there, and welcome to episode 9 of Gabba Gabba Hunt Talks. On this week's episode, I have my first returning guest, Matt Welborn, from episode 2 of Gabba Gabba Hunt Talks, as well as Bob Wall. Matt and Bob are in Spacelab together, and while we talked about all of Matt's previous projects on the episode that he was on this episode we focus mostly on Bob and all the projects he's been involved in. Couple of notes about this episode. This episode happened the weekend before everything started shutting down because of the coronavirus. Social distancing was already being encouraged and practiced, and we did the same when we recorded this episode. We set up to record in the room, and we all just kind of sat back and had a good time, but kept our distance. And the microphones were in the middle of the room, so I just cranked them up, and therefore the sound's a little uneven on this one. You'll also hear dogs barking, the microphones pick up us fidgeting sometimes, you'll hear cars in the background, and there are other artifacts, but I've worked with all this the best that I can. I will say that Matt made an excellent co-host on this episode, and that won't be the last time you hear something like this. I have plans to incorporate people that I've had on this podcast before into future episodes. Now, it's currently 3:30 in the morning, and I still have to finish up this episode, including editing this that I'm saying right now. So I'm going to kind of wrap this up. But before I go, I do want to remind you to listen to our sister podcast, the Spit in My Face podcast, where Frankie Pointless brings you the best punk rock you've never heard. New episodes drop on Saturdays. You can hear that wherever you get your podcast or at spitinmyfacepodcast.com. I also want to thank our first sponsor for this podcast. If you're interested in sponsoring this podcast, you can go to patreon.com and find out a lot of different ways to support the podcast and zine and the project we have going on here. But this week, I want to thank Regis Murphy for sponsoring the podcast. Now, we love DIY for a lot of things, but for buying or selling your house, you might need some help. And you should call Regis. I highly recommend Regis. He's a super cool guy. If you're local to the Charlotte scene, you probably already know him. But if you don't know him and don't know how to get in touch with him, contact me and I'll point you in the right direction. Or look for Regis Murphy, Daring and Positive Real Estate Broker with Helen Adams Realty on Facebook. One more thing before I move on to the episode. Right now, times are really uncertain, and I get that. A lot of us are probably watching our wallets because we don't know where the next paycheck's going to come from right now. But if you can support, a lot of local bands, a lot of local businesses could really use your support right now. Look for your favorite bands on Bandcamp or look for their Facebook pages and they'll let you know where you can buy their music and merch. Look up your local businesses, see if they're offering gift cards. We may not be able to go out right now, but we can help our favorite businesses survive this. And when we get through this, on the other end, I want to see a lot of you out at shows. The fact that we're not going to be able to go out for probably at least a month, if not much longer than that, breaks my heart. And I can't wait to see all your faces again. Y'all be safe out there and keep doing the damn thing.
He's a weird guy. He had a cool car.
So I've got, he did. I had a car. Well, me and him had like the same car.
That's right.
His was
his was yellow.
But his was a Camaro and mine was a Firebird.
Yes,
but they were the same year, and they were exactly the same on the inside. Yes.
Bob knows his cars. This man knows cars. We just turn this into car talks.
We could do that.
Yeah. Not car talk, the NPR, but car talks.
Car talks, yeah.
It's different. So I've got Bob Wall here, and I don't really know a whole lot about you, Bob. I mainly know you through Matt, and Eric's talked about you, and I know that you played in Spacelab.
Yep. Matt and I played in Spacelab.
So the Spacelab was a project that you and Matt had together. But I don't really know much about you other than that, and that Matt tells me that you are always playing in 3 or 4 bands.
Yeah, I've always got something going on most of the time. I moved to this area in 1999. Matt was one of the first people I met.
Yeah.
And we started hanging out. We worked together at the record store. And it was always a fertile place to talk over ideas and bands and who you like, and kind of cool because Matt and I started showing up at the same shows. Like, well, all right, we can talk.
Yeah.
We started a group for a while there, and this is around. I don't know, when did we start Spacelab?
98, 99.
Nah, I wasn't even that early, but we didn't.
Was it not?
I think we got the idea.
Oh, no. Because me and Joanna had moved to Carborough.
Right.
So that would have been 2000, and we moved there in like August 2001.
Yeah. We talked about it way as a concept, way before we actually set up any equipment.
Yeah.
But I had gotten this idea. I had a roommate who had some trouble, and he sold me a bass amp, and I already had another bass amp. And I had a delay pedal, and I ran out these 2 lines, and I had a phaser pedal in 1 line. And I had this loop going in my living room. It was a pretty big living room. I was the only one living there. Yeah. And I got this idea for just a group like that. And I had been listening to Kraftwerk. There's no denying that that's the influence. Mm-hmm. And I did that, and I told Matt about it. He's like, "Oh, that's cool."
Well, the original thing you told me is that you wanted to make a movie.
And yes, there was
the movie was going to be called Spacelab. It's about a guy who went to space and got high.
But he couldn't because of all the problematic things like gravity, like, the stuff wouldn't stay in the pipe or,
Yeah.
But he would have to go to the syringe, but that wasn't cool. And there was a lot of problems with being in space and trying to get high.
But I remember then I told you, I was like, well...
I want to see this movie. It sounds like an awesome movie.
Well, I was like, well, let's make the soundtrack. And I remember you were like, oh, okay. I was like, I got this... And you just saw it down in my basement, this hearing tester thing with a ton of patch cables and oscillators and things on it. And
when I first met Matt, he said he was in a band. I'm like, cool, what's the name of your band? He's like, Super Spies. Like, all right, what do you play? He's like, oscillators. I'm like, what the hell is that? And then you explained it later on, like, it's a hearing tester. Do you remember those? Like, yeah, I do. With these patch cables. And we had that, and I bought some kind of it's like a loop factory kind of thing, but it was like a weird one made by Yamaha. Yeah. And we put these 2 things together with pedals, and then we started playing, and a friend of mine was like, "Why don't you guys just open up for us?" So we started playing out, and it was the weirdest thing. We started playing a lot of weird.
Well, we first started playing with Steve Pusser.
That's right. We had
and we have some tapes of that. And he would come over and play in our living room. He would play drums. And the house that I moved into, there was a Yamaha drum machine in there. And it's not a great drum machine. Unless you run it through some pedals and whatnot. So we had that. And then Steve played drums along with it. And it sounded really cool. And I don't know where it went from that.
It went from that where he was like, I don't know.
Yeah.
We eventually maybe stopped calling him. I don't know, but we would.
We still love you, Steve.
Yeah. We would set the machines up, and we would get like a beat going and an oscillator going and some other stuff, and then we would. That was practice, but we would go out back and throw horseshoes.
Oh yeah.
So we would be in the backyard playing a game of horseshoes and drinking beer, and the machines would be just going. Woo, woo, woo. So that was the beginning of the Spacelab, and
there's a lot of horseshoes.
Yeah, that was
sounds like my kind of band.
It was, and then we took it out on the road. We used to play at this place in Greensboro. I mean, these crazy people in Greensboro, like, they just liked it, and I don't.
We used to play this place, total dive bar, not like a hipster dive bar, but it was called Second Place.
Yeah.
And
it was right by the railroad tracks.
Yeah.
The tracks were right next to the bar.
And I mean, I remember I used to go in there before that when Joanna's sister lived in Greensboro, and you would go in at 9 o'clock and there would be a guy passed out at the bar and there would be 2 guys fighting, and there would be an old dude standing in front of the doorway to the bathroom so you couldn't get in, but he was playing the banjo. And they had like a lawn jockey in there. I mean, not cool stuff, you know. And it may have been a Confederate flag or something. But then, like, people convinced them, like, to let some bands play there. So then it became, like younger people with bands, and then like older drunks at the same time. Yeah. And I remember we played there, and this guy kept wanting to introduce the band and help us set up. And
it was always that, and that same guy later on. We were playing, and we had like a good groove going, and I think my guitar, we had a guitar amp with something going through it. It was facing us. He took the amp and just turned it towards him. And then he just kept dancing. Like, well, I'm not going to mess with this guy because
I completely forgot that we played there.
We played there like 2 or 3 times.
Yes.
It was like about the 3rd time, I was kind of like, we should keep doing this. And somebody recorded us while we were up there. It's like, guys, we made a tape of you guys. I'm like, all right. So that was something we had going on at that time, and we ended up making a record later on, and that Matt released.
Yeah.
So we did that.
Stephen Conrad helped us with
That's right. It was on Blastco.
Yeah.
So we did that, but at the same time, I had some other groups going on. When I first moved here, I was playing in a band called Razzle, which we practiced right before I moved here, and then we became a band.
Yeah.
And that was with Dave Bjorkback and Dave Cantwell and Al Henderson, who were all Wilmington people. School in Wilmington in the late 80s, early 90s, and played in bands down there.
Yeah.
And Wilmington had a great music scene at that time.
I actually got a tape when I DJ'd at WASU for my show. This band Shake sent me a tape. And I had it for years. And then later, years after I even knew Bob, he mentioned he was in Shake. And I was like, wait a minute. I got your demo tape. And went and dug that out. So that was, I guess, our first connection.
Yeah, Shake was a band that came out of another band in Wilmington. I think the first band I played in Wilmington that was really our band we had a band called Two Headed Dog, and it was a kind of a dark psychedelic thing.
Yeah.
And that was with a couple of friends of mine. It was Charles Hudson and Jeremy Matthews, and then out of that band, Shake became the other band, and that was more of the Mudhoney. Eventually. Kind of a proto-stoner band, which is kind of weird because Shake, eventually two of the guys in Shake ended up as the Weed Eater that we know that's so big now.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Dave Shepard and Keith Kirkham, also known as Kiko, were in Shake, and they actually started Shake. That was their heart and soul band. They started that, and just the two of them really, and another friend of theirs, and then my friend Jeremy and I joined later.
Yeah.
And we played quite a bit. We put out Two Headed Dog put out at least 2 cassettes, and then Shake put out 1 cassette and an unfinished CD. And I actually listened to it not too long ago. It's actually pretty good. And we toured a bit. We played. We went to New York and played. We did play at CBGB's, which was kind of cool. And we played in Baltimore and Richmond and all the, from here to there.
Yeah. And
that was a fun group. And it kind of eased out like bands do. And then I played in a few other bands in Wilmington.
So you said that was around like you said late 80s, early 90s? Or?
Two Headed Dog started in 92.
Okay. Yeah.
Shake started about a year later.
Okay, so
from 93 to 95 or 6.
So I think you're probably about our age. I mean,
a little bit older, I think. Yeah. I didn't really get out and start playing in the original rock bands until I was, 21 maybe.
Yeah.
So, so it took me a while to get on out there. Some people do it when they're really young.
Yeah.
But, I played that, and there were other good bands in Wilmington, like with the Razzle. Dave Bjorkback and I played in a band called Tricky the Cosmonaut. Dave Cantwell was in a band called Analog, which people really loved. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they moved up here. They were kind of the first, at least within our circle of people that moved to the Triangle, and they all went to school at State, so they had Analog here.
Yeah.
And so by the time I made it here, those guys had Dave Bjorkback had left Wilmington. They had started a band called Drug Yacht with 2 of the guys from Analog, Dave Heller. They'd started Drug Yacht then, and then Drug Yacht broke up over some things. And but they recently regrouped just a few years ago, which is kind of crazy for a band to have like a 17-year gap and get back together.
And they don't remember any of the old songs either, do they?
They just barely, because they never recorded them.
Yeah.
So when Drug Yacht broke up, Dave and I, we started a band. We didn't really have a name yet, and we had our other guitar player was Al Henderson, who was in a Wilmington band named Tex Svengali. And Tex Svengali was a great band for Wilmington.
I'd just like to say Tex Svengali, Kim Ware.
Kim Ware from...
We went to high school with.
Yeah, went to high school with her.
Yeah.
Small world after all.
I recorded their first release, which was a cassette. Tex Svengali, the name of the tape was I Am a Rock and Roll Wood Nymph. And
Tex Svengali was scheduled to play with our band, the Stylin Johnny Appleseeds, at Heretics once. I had the flyer, and they backed out or didn't make it or something. Yeah. There was a flyer with their band and our band on.
I knew when you were talking about them earlier, the name sounded real familiar for some reason. I couldn't quite place them.
It was one of those 7 bands tonight at Heretics.
Yeah. That's probably around the time that Shake was playing at Heretics, because we played there several times, but Tex could never quite leave town. There was always something that would come up. But of the 2 out-of-town gigs they got, they were way better than any gigs we ever got. So.
Hey, baby, do you know who I am? Or would you like to? Today I'm 17. I'm a man. Well, my name is Chuck, and I'm gonna be a star.
But Al from Tex Svengali ended up joining. We started Razzle after that in Chapel Hill, probably. So
I played Razzle on here before.
Yeah, that was
good stuff.
And Razzle, Al Henderson. We lost Al Henderson in early 2001, and we carried on. We talked about it, we hadn't recorded anything at that point, and we decided to record everything that we had written up to that point. And we put out a CD, and Clark Blomquist, who plays here in town quite a bit, Clark's like, I got a guy to join you guys. And it was Mike Robb, and Mike Robb played in Goat Thrower.
Oh, yeah, Goat Thrower.
Goat Thrower is this band from Chapel Hill, and what's Dan's last name? Dan Partridge.
Dan Partridge,
their lead singer. They were kind of a metal band, and all the metal guys in Raleigh just wanted to kill him because, you guys aren't real metal. But Dan will wear this helmet. And they played at King's in Raleigh, and some guy was really giving the band a lot of crap, and he took a trash can and threw it at their guitar player, who was playing a BC Rich. He took the BC Rich and threw it with the pointy, ends at the guy. And that's where that's our guy. If we ever get back together and play.
Man, I remember seeing Goat Thrower, I think, at the Cradle, and some dude showed up who was super into them and was banging his head as hard as he could against the side of the stage. It was nuts. They were a good band, because if you knew Dan in real life, you wouldn't think that he would be the front guy for this metal band at all.
Dan's in Pine State too, as the Gimp. Yeah. The Gimp in Pine State. But so we got Mike Robb, and we had Razzle, and Razzle was a band from about 01 to 04, and Razzle was a great band that we ended up doing another recording, a CD.
Razzle 7-inches are still available, you guys.
Yeah, I think he's got a few boxes in there.
Yes. So, Razzle went to 2004.
Yeah.
And then after that, kind of split off in a few other directions.
Yeah. Are you from Wilmington originally?
I'm from Winston-Salem.
Okay.
I went to UNCW.
Yeah.
I went there straight out of high school and went down there. And so that's how I ended up down there.
So, before you moved to Wilmington, when you lived when you were in high school, were you into what kind of music were you into then? Were you already finding punk rock and stuff? I use the term punk rock very loosely.
Right.
I basically mean
Let me. Here's how I found it. I guess I listened to Hendrix, and I listened to really bad metal.
Well, that's kind of that's me and Matt. That's where we came from. I was looking at Matt's records earlier. His Hendrix collection is just. But that's where we came from too.
Yeah,
and you say really bad metal. I still like a lot of that stuff. But
when I say bad, I don't mean Iron Maiden. I mean Crocus.
Well, I like that stuff. I like Cinderella. Yeah. I like Whitesnake. I love Whitesnake.
I see.
So you can't really say bad metal to me, and I'll just be like, you're wrong. It's not bad.
When I say bad metal, I mean I didn't keep the Crocus records around. I kept every Iron Maiden record I ever had.
I almost bought a Crocus record yesterday.
I think what got me really to move over to the other side, and it was kind of weird, was I bought the Replacements' Let It Be. I saw it on it was on MTV's those Sunday night, like the Cutting Edge show. I'm like, who are these guys? And I bought it, and I was like, oh, this is not that good. I had heard it on I used to listen to in Winston-Salem. I lived outside of Winston in Louisville, and I could pick up Davidson College radio on my headphones, and I used to listen to that, and they played some, more interesting stuff that I'd ever heard, and I heard some Replacements.
Talked about this when we grew up in WNCW.
I'm
late
sure
at night.
you guys probably heard it.
That's what Roger even talked about WDAV on that.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the first thing I ever heard, what really got me, I heard that song "Within Your Reach," that Replacement song, which has got more flange guitar than any album should ever need. It's like straight. I'm like, who would put this out? This is pretty good.
Yeah.
And so I heard that, and then I went and bought "Let It Be," and I'm like, man, I don't know about this. But it did have that Black Diamond, Kiss Black Diamond cover.
That's a good one.
And after about 2 weeks, that record is like, all right, I'm on board. And things just kind of fell in place after that. I had a cousin who, she had a box of tapes, and never mind the boxes in there. Like, okay, let me see that. That made total sense. So I started getting over the other side, and then Black Flag. I started seeing Black Flag on TV. That made sense.
What the hell TV were you watching when you saw Black Flag?
My parents were split up, and my dad had an apartment. And he had cable. Now, at our house, we didn't have cable. We lived in the country, but my dad had cable. So I don't remember. I guess on Sunday nights on MTV, they had a thing called IRS The Cutting Edge, which was a great show. But they had other things too. And also Night Flight.
Night Flight. I was just thinking that. Yeah.
Night Flight was the source of a lot of stuff that Otherworld. I wouldn't have picked that up any other place. So I started figuring all that out. And that was the crossover, putting all the punk rock stuff like that together.
Yeah, I forget about Night Flight sometimes, too. Yeah. But like back before MTV was... This is around the same time MTV was happening. But like Night Flight was when it got weird.
Yeah, it seemed more
then MTV did that a little bit later on with some of their stuff, but not quite. They never quite reached Night Flight levels.
Yeah, it always seemed like it was coming still out of that spirit of the 70s.
Yeah.
More than the 80s.
I think my first roommate in college, I had Damaged and all that, and this roommate was a little bit older. He's like, "Oh, I know this stuff. It's from this soundtrack." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" It's a Repo Man soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, things really started coming together from all the different places then. But
it's not hard once you find it. The puzzle pieces really do fall into place.
Yeah. Oh yeah. The Minutemen came to Winston-Salem it was right before they stopped playing. They Minutemen and REM, and it's one of the biggest regrets of shows that my car wouldn't start. I could have found a way to get there,
Yeah.
But luckily Winston-Salem had Mitch Eastern, Let's Active, and so just the fact that he had recorded REM and I knew who REM was, and the whole Cutting Edge thing. I knew who the Flat Duo Jets were pretty early. Feel good to know that I knew that stuff, and I was like, still in high school. So, I don't know. I kind of crossed a bridge there at some point, I guess, and got away from Crocus.
Yeah, I never really quite got away from it. It still holds on to me.
That's one of the interesting thing about Razzle. When we started Razzle, we were we're all kind of mathy rock at this point, and we wanted to be the next Polvo, and we ended up being the next. We started throwing in Maiden riffs without knowing it, and all of a sudden we're playing that's stuff like that. So.
Yeah, because we were talking about cover up before, and you guys did. I mean, it wasn't straight up Razzle, was it? But
that was Razzle with Scotty Irving playing drums.
Scotty Irving played drums.
Yeah, and we did Iron Maiden the first time we ever did the cover up, and it was.
You got that on video somewhere, don't you? You said
you
saw it recently.
Yeah. Dave Bjorkback has it. It was
That was good. That was good.
And we did all early. We only did one song, I think, from Number of the Beast. Everything else is from the first two albums.
And yeah, because you did Number of the Beast, because I remember Scotty read the intro straight from, he had his Bible out. And then you guys did that again at Go, didn't you? But without...
We did it at Go. And,
was Scotty there for that?
Yeah, he was there.
Okay.
He was there for sure. And our friends did Thin Lizzy.
Mm-hmm.
They did it both places. And the Go performance, the cover up, everybody's doing cover bands. The Go, we made these flyers. Cantwell made these flyers, and he gave names to the bands, and he called ours Eddie's Army. And these guys came out from like Garner, ready to see a Maiden cover band, but it was us. And we didn't dress up or anything. It was just kind of, I was wearing a black T-shirt. These guys were ready for some Maiden, and it was kind of scary because Mike Robb nicknamed these guys out in the crowd. He's like, "Uh-oh, there's the judges. The judges are out there." These guys standing with their arms crossed, watching us play. And we kind of won them over, but it was a little tense there for a little bit. But it was a fun experience doing that. And we did lots of cover-up stuff. But
That's not that fun. I know anytime we ever did those cover shows, it's always a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of work getting ready.
Yeah. One of my regrets is that I remember us and SJA and Popes on Dope always talked about doing the Germs GI.
Oh, yeah.
Where one of us was going to do one side and one the other, but we could never agree on who was going to do what and get it together to learn the songs.
That would still be good to do that today.
Yeah,
somehow, with somebody somewhere.
Because we always did Lexicon Devil, and I think we did a great version of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, cut all that part out.
What was the first concert that you saw? Like the first band you saw live?
Well, the first live thing I ever saw, it's kind of funny, and it is what I count is that I saw an Elvis impersonator. And I reason that it counts to me because it was a loud show. And it was at the Ramada Inn in Clemens, North Carolina. And it was about a year after Elvis died. And when the year Elvis died, he died the same year that Leonard Skinner had the plane crash. It was like a
77.
77. It was a crazy summer. I guess Elvis had a hit right before he died, that song Way Down. So I kind of, and I grew up with Elvis, and my family all loved Elvis. When he died, it was a big deal. My dad came home from work saying Elvis passed away and all this. And about a year later, this Elvis impersonator came to the Ramada Inn in Clemens and played out there. And my whole family went. My grandmother, my aunts, my cousins. We all went to see this show. And it was a Sunday afternoon. But the room was dark. And this guy came out, and he had, as an Elvis guy, he had a band. He had a light blue suit on. And the only reason, my aunt pulled out these pictures about a month ago that she had. And I don't know, that was kind of the first show where I thought, this is great. This is loud. They had guitars, they had drums. I'm like, this is cool. I had a Dr. Pepper, and I was over the moon about that. Because it was a hotel bar kind of room. But there was that. And then later on, I guess the first big rock show, real one. I think maybe I saw Night Ranger or Heart at the Carowinds Palladium.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to think who opened for Heart. Helix opened for Heart, and Tony Carey opened up for Night Ranger.
Yeah, at least I saw a bunch of shows at the Palladium at Carowinds.
We saw Firehose at the.
Yeah, we saw Firehose at Carowinds.
I think I remember that.
It was the Connells.
Buffalo Tom.
Dylan Fence, the Connells, Buffalo Tom, and Firehose, I think.
Yeah, we left after Fire hose, I think.
Is this when Firehouse was around? People were confusing the bands.
It's probably how they got the gig.
I think, yeah.
To Carowinds.
Yeah, those were some of the...
I seen Weird Al there. I saw Belinda Carlisle there. Expose. Starship in the outfield.
Man,
Tiffany.
yeah. Oh, wow, that's right.
I was supposed to go see Bob Dylan, but I got banned from Carowinds for a year.
That's when you got banned with Bob Dylan? Wow.
Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
it's Bob Dylan, the Bengals opened up, and my parents went, my brother went. They brought me back a Bengals t-shirt, but I couldn't go because I was banned from Carowinds for a year for stealing.
On a church trip.
On a church trip.
Yeah, I was there.
One of the first punk rock shows I remember was, there was a show at Wake Forest University. All of a sudden, what's the band? It's the drummer who ended up in the Squirrel Nut Zippers, Chris Phillips. Subculture.
Yeah.
That's right. His band played at this. They had this like big punk rock showcase. And I think it was in Waite Chapel. It was in the big church there, and it was like an afternoon show that went most of the night. I'd never been to any real punk rock shows at that point. And they had a few around Winston-Salem. There was a pita restaurant called Pockets where they had shows like that. But they had this big showcase of, they were high school bands. And it was like one of the first ones I saw. And I remember they were playing, they did basically a Run DMC cover. It was like, this is a Run DMC song we wrote lyrics for it. It's called My Penis. It was My Adidas. And I remember that clearly. And it's kind of crazy that Chris Phillips, I knew him in high school, actually. We had a math class together, so he was a real nice guy, real cool.
Yeah.
And then, he'd come back around later, and all of a sudden he's on TV with Squirrel Nut and all that.
Yeah.
I remember Chris telling me about their band, Subculture, and he's like, the name of our record label is called Fart Blossom. I'm like, what? That's kind of cool.
That record they did is really good.
Yeah.
It's a good record. I'd like to find a copy of that.
I think I've seen one copy of that. Maybe ever.
So what'd you do after Razzle, man? Spacelab.
Spacelab and Razzle went concurrently.
I knew Spacelab was around that time.
Yeah.
That's the first when I first heard about Razzle. I think you were already doing Spacelab at that time.
Yeah, probably.
So about Spacelab, so that was, when you did live shows, was it rehearsed or did you just kind of do whatever?
It was pretty freeform all the time.
I mean,
that's the impression I got. I was just kind of curious.
We did this thing called, what we called maps.
We didn't have set list.
No. We wouldn't really practice. We would get an idea. We were like, okay, let's do this thing. I'm going to do, this setting over here with this beat and do this. And what do you got? I'm going to do this. And we would do that. So we would have maps. We kind of figure out how we're going to get from one section to another.
Yeah.
And we would...
it would be time, too. It'd be
we're
going to play for this long.
Yeah.
Sometimes, that didn't always work out. But it was like, let's try to...
It didn't matter if it didn't work out.
Do like a 30-minute set. We'll get from here to here. We'll do this for this long. And then we'll go into this. There were never like song breaks. It was just kind of like...
We would have a beginning and an end and several
cues. We would have cues.
Cues, yeah. There was always some kind of segue to get us from one thing to the other. And it always pretty much worked out. And there were times when we had other people in the band, too.
Ben Florin was a big part of Spacelab for a while, and he's on the record. And he moved away before the record got pressed, and we've never gotten him a copy. His parents still live in town, and he comes every Christmas, but we never hear from him. His brother lives right down the street now.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, he lives in Northgate Park. We saw him at Shadowbox.
Okay.
And he's like, yeah, it's hard to get in touch with Ben. So Ben, if you're out there and you hear this, we got a copy waiting for you.
Who else? We had Ann Gomez in the band for a while.
Yeah.
On saxophone.
And in the Saxolitas.
The Saxolitas. We had
my sister, Emily, and her roommate, Lauren Genuine Draft.
Lauren Genuine Draft.
They also played saxophone.
Also known as Lauren Quinn. So
yeah. Eric Huskins was going to practice.
Was a member for a while that...
we had a show that he practiced, and it was like, well, we're going to play the show. And he's like, nah, man, I don't want to do it. He backed out. Like,
I have to ask him why. He probably doesn't remember. He probably
The cool thing is, we made a program
Oh, that's
for
right.
that show.
I totally forgot about that.
And he did make it into the program.
Yeah.
So in the program notes, he's
an ex-member.
He's credited. Definitely an ex-member. But yeah, when the time came, he's like, nah, I don't think I can do that. So,
Yeah.
All right. So Spacelab at times was more structured than not. But we always had something. And we also used to do video things. We would the first time. We always either had films. There was a time we had a bunch of old TVs playing different things.
Yeah, we had that Heaven's Gate call. The video that guy made before they all killed themselves. And we had the audio of that running through. We could fade it in and out as it went. There was one show we did where Bob and I bought a bunch of $5 tape decks. You could find those at thrift stores.
Yeah.
We had all these tapes. I don't remember what we had on, but we just had like all these tapes running at the same time that we could fade them in and out. I don't remember half the shows. I think we have them all on video somewhere.
It was kind of weird when we decided to make an album around 2004. We borrowed an 8-track machine, an 8-track half-inch machine from Matt Cow, who I was also playing in a band with at the time called Hotel Motel. And we'll talk about Matt later, since we still play in a band. But we borrowed a machine, we kept that for a while, and we started putting songs together. I don't know how we got started. I think maybe we did have a couple of things with the Yamaha drum machine that was really solid. But between that and between Ben Florin, we put together a really good record.
There's a lot of outtakes. It took a lot of editing.
There's a lot of editing.
And Ben brought a lot of really great ideas.
But it was on tape, so it was a lot of tape editing. There's a lot of real creative punch-ins that it's amazing that they happened at all.
Yeah.
Like there's, I can still listen to it and I can tell where one thing's going to go. It goes down to this one note, and I managed to punch right in and get the next note there where it wasn't like that before. It was the only digital part of that record was the mixing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of hard. We had Chris Rossi helping us. Chris was like, "What do you want me to do?" Like, all we want you to do is to get this onto a digital format. We don't want to really have to do anything.
Mixing that was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Bob and I would show up at Chris Rossi's house and go into his room with a 6-pack of beer and kind of stumble out a few hours later.
Laundry basket of dirty underwear next to us.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
but we knew what we wanted, I think, when we went in.
We definitely did.
Had ideas. And I'm really proud of that record. And yeah, you said we recorded in like 2004, but it didn't come out till, 2010?
Or 11.
Yeah.
It may have taken that long. Yeah, there was some things that prevented it getting done on time.
Yeah, money.
The money was the major one. Some personal stuff. And then, just like, I started playing with other bands too, and the things just kind of extended out.
Yeah.
But mainly we did. It was kind of good in a way because we did listen to it a lot, and we kind of knew by the time we were really getting ready to put it out exactly what we wanted to do. So it turned out to be a great record.
Spacelab was never on there. We didn't play like other bands. Like for a while, we would play once a year, and that was it. Like that's all you were gonna get.
Yeah.
And then it was like, we may play this year. We haven't played in a few years.
There was a while there. We just wait. If somebody will ask, we will play.
Yeah.
You guys will play?
Yeah.
Sure, we'll do that.
Yeah, because it's not like we can just go in and be like, okay, let's bash out these songs. It's like, well, we got to create a whole new map.
Yeah. So the longer the gap, it's kind of like what we do now.
Bigger the map.
Yeah. So we even in the last few years we got equipment that was all battery run. It was like, this is a whole new thing. But setting up a Spacelab show is a whole ordeal with all the power running everywhere. But we got a bunch of equipment that was all battery operated, and we did that's when we did the double live tape. The live on one side, live on the bass.
Oh yeah. That we recorded. There's that live tape that I put out that we did it. One side is us practicing in the basement here, and then the other side is the show at the Casbah in Durham, which is no longer around. That was a fun show.
That was a good show. But
yeah, we would have to map out like how to set up the equipment on the stage.
Yeah.
Because there's so many cables, and we each had mixers, and sometimes running into another mixer, and it was complicated to set that stuff up.
I bet so. Yeah.
And even in the old days, we didn't have mixers so much as we brought a bunch of different amplifiers for each thing.
Yeah,
we played that show at Bully's Basement where we brought a bunch of amplifiers, and that was the show we did with the Karloffs.
Oh, yeah.
Even burned out an amplifier because they were wiring in that club.
Yeah.
But
and then we played...
that was the show with Cold Sides.
Yeah, that's right. And then we played up near D.C. and Peter's...
Yeah, Peter Getty's
house.
Of Nutstop fame. We played in his house. And
he would have shows in his house down in his basement, and we played and we learned, we don't need amps. We're just going to run through this old stereo.
We had an old stereo for a while. That's when we started using DJ mixers. I know we had one DJ mixer, and each one of us had our own mixers into an old stereo. I was like, and it worked just fine.
So then we just learned, we'll just run through the club's PA.
It took us that long to get it together.
And, the sound guys would always be like, well, what do I need to mic? No, man, just plug into this box. Do whatever you want.
We had the one guy's like, plug all your stuff into my board and I'll mix you. Like, no. That's our job and not yours. Don't do that. He was trying to make it easy. That's not how it was going to work.
Turn the volume up.
Just turn it up, man.
Just turn the volume up.
Or there was the guy at Bullies who we don't want to run through the system. We've got this. You can just take it easy.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy was like, we nicknamed him because he ran all three. We played a few shows there. We nicknamed him Dr. Sound.
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Sound. Dr. Sound was a notoriously cranky sound man, just like a lot of them, but he was pretty bad. And we didn't want to deal with Dr. Sound. So, look here, Dr. Sound. I think I called him that. I think I made the mistake. I think I called him Dr. Sound, and he didn't seem to flinch. I was like, Dr. Sound, I think we got this. He's like, okay, it's cool. So he left us alone after that because he was like, I don't know what's going on here.
So who were you playing with around that same time?
At the same time, that was... we talked about Cold Sides earlier, just for a brief bit there, and
we were out grilling out burgers, talking about that earlier.
Yeah, Cold Sides was a band with Zeke Graves and Robert Biggers. Robert Biggers was in the White Octave, and Zeke Graves had played in I think he was in a band called Three Stigmata in Chapel Hill. But they had a kind of a quiet project called Cold Sides, and eventually Cold Sides developed into a rock band, and then they got Dave Cantwell, who was our bass player in Razzle, and he had a band called Cantwell, Gomez, and Jordan. And when they got him to join Cold Sides, it kind of pulled him from both of his bands, which kind of threw a wrinkle in Razzle's time.
Yeah.
And Cantwell, Gomez, and Jordan's time. So, and Gomez, who was the bass player in Cantwell, Gomez, and Jordan, was like, I want to start a pop band. I'm like, okay. And we put up flyers to find a guitar player for a pop band, and we found Matt Cowell.
I didn't know you put up flyers for it.
It wasn't a flyer, but it was something. Maybe it was a listserv or something. We put it out there, and that's who we got. And it was the weirdest pop band you can imagine because it was real. So Hotel Motel was a band during that time period, and we actually put out 3 self-released CDs. And
I got copies of them earlier.
Yep. So we did 3 albums, and then when after Hotel Motel broke up, when Razzle broke up, I had been playing with a band called Erie Choir. I started playing with a band called Erie Choir, which was Eric Rohrig from Sorry About Dresden's solo project, and Eric had been playing for a while, acoustic, and he'd had a band together too, and eventually. I think I was doing a gig with the Torch Marauder. He had a live band for a couple of gigs.
Oh, Torch Marauder is a whole other thing.
That's a whole other thing.
Get into.
But he ended up like, you want to come play guitar with me? And I'm like, yeah, I would love that. And we started playing, and we played together. So I played in Erie Choir, and I still do.
Town's taught me anything. It's that the odds are stacked. You better watch your back if you can.
started playing together in 2004, and Hotel Motel probably stopped playing in 2005 and 6.
Yeah.
So at that time, there was a break between Hotel Motel and something, but I was very active at Erie Choir at the time.
Erie Choir toured a lot, right? I mean, you
Erie
guys
Choir,
went all over.
We did tour some, yeah. We went in that time period, we went to New York and back several times.
And farther out west, didn't you? Didn't you guys
in 07, we did a big tour. We went all the way back out we went as far out as Omaha and Detroit, Chicago, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, New York a couple of times. Yeah, we did get around a little bit. And at some point, somewhere in there, Matt Cowell from Hotel Motel started another band, and with Robert Biggers, who was in Cold Sides, and that band became The Weekend.
Okay.
And we actually still play. So
Yeah.
in the last minute or so, it's been pretty blurry with Erie Choir and The Weekend. But basically, end of the story, I basically still play in both of those bands.
Yeah.
So I play bass in The Weekend. I play guitar in Erie Choir. And all of those came out of that same time period that, Spacelab was still going, and Hotel Motel ended, and Razzle ended, and so it's kind of a nice circle of musicians and friends that I do play with.
I think we need to go back. I don't know if any of this is going to make it in there, if it's all just wondering too much, but to explain the Torch Marauder.
Okay.
Because I don't think you've ever seen the Torch Marauder.
No.
Okay, so this is...
I can make this kind of concise, I think.
This is some high concept stuff here.
We're still talking about David Bjorkback here. Dave Bjorkback. Drummer for Tricky the Cosmonaut. After Dave moved to Durham in 97, he was the first one to move to Durham. He moved up here and he started a band. Tricky the Cosmonaut had broken up. That was kind of a jolt because we were actually getting somewhere, I think. And when he got here, he started a band called Drug Yacht with Dave Heller and Dave Cantwell.
The 3 Days of Durham.
The 3 Days of Durham. And although Cantwell did not, nor did Heller live in Durham at that time. They were both Raleigh guys at that time.
That's how they thanked on the Spacelab LP.
Yeah. They went to State. They started a band called Drug Yacht. Drug Yacht was a really good kind of, I wouldn't call them a Minutemen band, but they were like a real kind of a heavy trio. Mm-hmm. And they were really not together all that long. So they split up. Two of the Daves had some differences, and I'll leave it at that. So Dave Bjorkback suddenly has had two bands break up on him in a short amount of time. He's like, I'm tired of this. I want to rock. So he started this concept called the Torch Marauder. And he dressed up in he had a cape and black pants, and he would paint his face and chest blue, like Duke blue. And he did like a multimedia thing where he would correspond with the taped version of himself, which was on a TV. Mm-hmm. And this was the late 90s, so it was VHS.
Yeah.
And he had like a thing where he would videotape himself playing drums and singing on the TV, and he would sing along. And he would kind of get it to where he would do these skits. And it was good, and it was really funny. And when he played out in front of like people like us, we loved it. We thought it was hilarious.
Yeah.
And when he would take it places where they didn't know what to do. He brought it to Winston-Salem to the warehouse one time. The people at the warehouse were like, it's okay to laugh, man. It's okay. This is good, and you can just take it for whatever. I'd be like, okay.
I just remember the skit about the hair. Everyone was like, Torch, and hey, Torch, like, you got a haircut, and it would just go back and forth like, yeah, I did, what do you think, And every time it was the same jokes because it was on TV, and you couldn't change it, but it was always funny.
Yeah.
He had long hair, and he's like, he had to get a haircut. He's like, I'm going to film the haircut. And he pieced together this mullet bit. Yeah, as he cut his hair, he cut it into a mullet. Then he did a mohawk.
I forgot about that whole mullet. Like, what do you think?
That was, he recently, he hasn't done the Torch Marauder in years, but he recently did it at the Cat's Cradle 50th anniversary show. And it was nice to see that again.
Was it still on VHS?
He's gone to DVD.
Nice.
but it is a DVD TV.
So,
it wasn't on the big screen. It was on the TV.
said it before, but too loud. Then you let it go for a while. Now you say it again so softly. No one can hear you. No one can hear you. No one can hear you. But yeah,
he toured with that, right?
he did. He
Like,
went.
him in a car and a TV.
Oh wow.
He did a bigger tour than, I mean, at least travel-wise, than I've ever done. He I think this was 2000. He got in his car and did the whole Southwest. He drove to through Texas, Arizona. We did LA, all the way up to Seattle and across. And I caught up with him in Chicago and rode that leg back through like Chicago and Pittsburgh.
And I remember him complaining, like, at the end of the night going to get paid, and they would want to pay him less because he was one guy. And he's like, no, man, this is the band.
Yes.
I did just as much as those four guys. Like, you need to pay me.
He made T-shirts on his tour, and he sold out all the smalls to all these like muscle-bound guys that were like, wanting small T-shirts. These little girls were like, "I want a T-shirt." I'm like, "I don't have any more smalls." So he's like, guys, like, "Give me a small." Like, dude, you need a large T-shirt. And his gut hanging. I was like, "I want a small. Got to look good." And great stories from his tour.
He's got two CDs up, too?
I think he's got 3 or 4. Actually.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I played on probably all of them. He would get people from all the bands to play on his CDs, and it's kind of weird how the albums were like, well, you do this video thing, but you actually make records too.
Yeah. And the songs were good.
Great songs.
It's the thing, man.
And
Wasn't skimping on the song department.
No. And he turned that into another band, actually. That became a band called the Grappling Hook, where the first couple of shows he wore the makeup, and then he stopped doing the makeup, where he was Dave was he's a good lead singer.
Yes, he
was that when he lived in Chicago, and then he played the drums here in Razzle and Tricky Cosmo. But with the Torch Marauder and with the Grappling Hook, he really went back to his frontman. Which is really how we started, kind of what we do now. A couple of times a year, we were talking about this earlier, we do a soft rock cover band called the Wusses. Mm-hmm. And this was right after Razzle. Razzle split up, and we became friends with the Sorry About Dresden guys, James and Eric mainly. Torch Marauder had played. That's where I first saw Sorry About Dresden at some early Torch Marauder shows, and the crossover was there. And Dave Cantwell and Bjorkback started talking about, we want to do a soft rock thing. We want to start playing soft rock songs. And they're like, well, I want in. And the guys, James and Eric, are like, we want in too. So we got together, and I think it was 2004. It was after Razzle broke up, after I joined Erie Choir, and things kind of cross-pollinated. And we started talking about this thing. But the way we started was we did the great cover-up in 2004, and we did the Little River Band.
Mm.
Oh, yeah.
And we picked 5 Little River Band songs, which is really hard because there's at least 12 hits that we had, to pick from. And that was how the Wusses started. We learned those songs. We got a few other people to join the band. We got Chris Rossi on guitar. We got Jeff Herrick to play trumpet. And that became, with the Little River Band, the cover-up. And then the next year, we played our first gig proper, and that was we did the Wusses.
That's the highest paying band you've ever been in, isn't it?
It is, actually.
Well, that's what, if you want to make money playing music these days, you play covers. And
you guys turned down.
If you can find that niche, you can probably make even better money.
If you guys did that full time, you could make money, but y'all just
we learned
not about that.
Well, no, we gave it a shot. We did that. We got good at what we were doing with learning lots of songs like that, and it's a very diplomatic process to pick the songs that we learn. We don't just pick anything.
You got standards.
We have standards. We have rules. We have dress codes. You can't wear 80s pants in a 70s band. If you you need to look at your shoes before you come to a Wusses show.
Yeah.
To play the show. And like I was telling you earlier, people were like, why don't you guys play Journey? I'm like, well, that's hard rock. We're not playing any sticks in Journey. We have rules. Mike Robb always wanted to like, if you guys ever play any Van Morrison, I'm out of here. Like, you're not here anyway. but we never have played any Van Morrison.
I just going back to your dress code.
Yeah.
Bob in the band is I don't know, can I say this? Bobby Turnblue, his alter ego.
That's right.
Who also released a version of Sly and the Family Stones, Just Like a Baby, on a covers compilation, which is really good.
Yes.
Credited to Bobby Turnblue.
Just like a baby. Sometimes I cry. Just like a baby.
But Bobby Turnblue has a Quaalude shirt that you worn with the Wusses and got
The Wusses
got
played.
a few comments on it.
Where did we play? We played. The Wusses played.
Y'all played the state fair one time.
We have done that. That was a little scary because some of the people there were. This is right at the beginning of Trump. So real Trumpers right down front. But we played a show in Chapel Hill during the summer one time, and I found this Quaalude shirt. It's like the shirt that Chong's wearing in Up in Smoke, except he's wearing like a red jumpsuit. I found the T-shirt.
Yeah.
And I was wearing that, and it was hot, and I usually have some kind of shirt, like a overshirt, like a collared shirt, but I just had that shirt on, and I sang my song. I think at that point I had started singing one song per show, and I was Magnet and Steel, and people were like, I heard about this later, I didn't realize it at the time. People were like, what shirt is that? What is that shirt? And people were on their phones trying to figure out what the shirt was, and by the end of the show, people were like, Bobby Turnblue's wearing a Quaalude shirt.
You say some guy just came up and was like, yeah.
That did
Had a lot of good times on that.
So Chapel Hill guy out of the woodwork. I knew what my Quaalude shirt was immediately. And yeah, I haven't worn that shirt all that much since, but I still haven't. But yeah, the Wusses, I don't know. We kind of realized, we played a few weddings and we realized it's not that much fun if you don't know the people in the wedding. And you and I have done wedding DJ gigs, and you've done a lot more than I have because I don't like it.
Yeah, it's not cool.
It's not fun when you're playing stuff they don't want to hear.
Yeah.
So, but the Wusses we've been playing for almost 15 years now. So
y'all still play every December, like at Motorco, right?
We always play every year. We used to play every New Year's Eve, which turned into let's play a holiday show so we can do some other stuff on New Year's Eve. And it works because everybody else in the Wusses has something else going on. We all still play in bands. As far as the Wusses go, James Hepler and I, James is our bass player in the Wusses, we play in Erie Choir together. Eric Roerig from the Wusses, or from Erie Choir, was in the Wusses years ago. He decided to go to law school, so he gave his seat to Matt Kalb, who I play in The Weekend with. We also played in Hotel Motel. Dave Yorkback and I played in Razzle. Jeff Herrick has played in mini band. He, after being in the Wusses, he and two other guys started a horn section. Dave Garfield and Hank Pellerin started the horn section. They started doing horn sections with many bands around here. And they call themselves the Hercules Europe Brass, after Herrick's name in the band, which is Hercules Europe. Cantwell still plays with, he plays with his wife in a band called Horizontal Hold. He played in Cantwell, Gomez, and Jordan. He plays in a band now called Blab School. It's a new band. They've played about 2 or 3 shows. Thickery Ucell plays bass, and the guitar player and other guitar player. I don't know them all that well, but they're fairly newcomers around here, and they've got a great band. Who else? Chris Rossi has a band called Woodvamp, and Chris Rossi runs Dusky Amplifiers, who is a small, up-and-coming, but very quickly up-and-coming amplifier and pedal company.
Yeah.
So everybody in the Wuss is pretty well plugged in.
Yeah.
Chris also had Spacelab Studios.
He has Spacelab Studios.
Mix the Spacelab LP, but they are not related.
And he is steadfast in keeping his Spacelab, and we've been pretty steadfast in keeping ours. And there's been times where Chris is like, "Don't you know I had this already?" I'm like, "Sorry, man. we're not giving it up because we're a little too into this too." But Chris is our friend. I've known Chris a long time. So yeah, the Wusses is definitely the culmination of many people still doing.
I never thought about it that way, but yeah,
it's a lot of crossover.
You didn't mention you're playing with Dirty Little Heaters and
yes, Reese McHenry, who is got a solo record out right now and touring quite a bit. She's doing really well. Reese and I first played together in one of her side projects called Lake and Hennepin, and that was fairly short-lived, at least for me. They were together for a while.
Yeah.
And then we did a project of some of her more country-ish songs called Second Wife.
Yeah.
She had some songs. She didn't know what to do. She's like, I want to get you, Chuck Garrison, who from Pipe, and Dave Perry. Dave Perry had played in Jet Rink, as well as many other bands in Chapel Hill.
That was a good band.
Great musician.
Yeah.
Jet Rink was a great band. She's like, I want to get you guys and to get together. And Dave had played in Dave was in Dirty Little Heaters as the drummer.
They started out as a Dirty Little Heaters as a duo.
That was a
years
duo
ago,
with
a long time ago.
Melissa Thomas played drums, and then it went to a trio with Rob Walsh and Dave Perry. She had some songs. She's like, I want you guys to let's go to Jerry Key's place in Mebane, and I've got these songs, let's just do it. So we did that, and we hammered out this record called The Second Wife. And it's about 9 songs. Caitlin Carey played on the record. Chris Gilchrist played lap steel. We did that, and we did that band for a while. And we had some personnel changes where we really just kind of had trouble keeping the band together. And Reese was starting to do more and more solo stuff. At the same time, Reese was working with the band Spider Bags on a solo record. And that started taking off. And Second Wife, that record came out, and it got some good acclaim. And then she started doing that and doing more solo stuff. And her solo stuff was a little bit... she started working with other people in a little more poppy direction than we were doing. And so I eventually ended up playing in the Dirty Little Heaters, which is a lot of her more rock songs. And that's been a lot of fun. So we still do get together and do that. To be a completist, I have not mentioned D-Town Brass.
Oh, that's true.
That's the D-Town Brass is a band started by Andy McGowan. And Andy McGowan's played with June back in the day. June had some acclaim. I think they had a record. He had a band called Starry Wisdom Bands, the first band I ever saw him in. He had a band, the Sleepies. I remember the Sleepies. I think that's right. If that's not right, it's taken out. But Andy McGowan started like this really huge, what he called a crime jazz band of mainly he would have 4 saxophones, 4 trumpets, trombones. He likes to double things up. He likes to have 2 baritone saxes, 2 trombones.
Got a vision.
He basically had every horn player he could find in town.
Yeah.
He definitely had all the Wusses horns at one time, so that they got a gig out of that too. and a rhythm section. The one thing he hasn't ever had in that band, to my knowledge, is a guitar. But
you were playing bass at that.
I play bass with them. They are a brass band. When a lot of the brass bands use the tuba for the bass, but Andy is a bass guitar player. And I played in a band. I played in Erie choir with Andy in the early days that I was in Erie choir. He was in that band, so we have played at least one other band together. But at some point, the original rhythm section for D-Town Brass fell away, and he asked Robert Biggers from the Weekend and me to join him at some point. And I believe that was in 2009 or 10. I really can't remember.
Yeah.
He's like, can you guys come play with us? We have a show on Halloween. I'm like, okay. And I believe we had that and a wedding gig. I think Robert made the wedding gig, but not the Halloween gig. I made both. And that's how we ended up playing with D-Town Brass. And D-Town Brass has changed quite a bit. And basically, D-Town Brass is Andy McGowan and Crow Meat Bob Pence. Crow Meat Bob is a Raleigh musician, saxophone player who's had many projects. He's one of the most prolific writers and players that I know. You're talking about me playing a lot. Crow Meat Bob really actually does play in a club several nights a week and holds down a job. He's a constant musician who also has some Wilmington roots. Not when I was there, but we know some of the same people from Wilmington. It's worth noting that D-Town Brass is also a lot of people who've been involved in the music scene around here over the years, and who are now older and still find the time to at least get out one night a week. Yeah. As I told you earlier, it's a lot of dads in that band. So
that's what I mean. Charlotte's the same way. There's a lot of dads, a lot of parents, moms and dads in the Charlotte scene. Yeah. And I kind of like that. I like seeing people that are my age playing in bands and doing the thing. Yeah. There's so many people that have given up on doing whatever it is they love by the time they reach our age.
The thing about D-Town Brass really is there was a period there where Andy's really tied into Durham. He's been working in the restaurants here in Durham way before Durham was cool. Oh yeah. Way before he was out in Durham. If you know Andy, he's a chef around Durham. He's owned a couple of restaurants that have made it pretty big, and he's always been serious about that side of things. So people in Durham know him, and I don't know how many places we've rehearsed at that have always been like a bombed out law office, a bombed out place that was about to become something big. And for a while there, he had us rehearsing at Motorco, which is a big club here in Durham. It's very active. He's like, we're going to rehearse here on Tuesday nights.
Well, his restaurant's
right around the corner. It's Gear Street Garden. But we were going to rehearse at Motorco, and it was open to the public. It's like, people can come to these rehearsals. I don't care. Well, we're just going to be rehearsing. Yeah. And we were working on these. It was an idea he had, but it was kind of neat. He's like, I don't care if people come to see this. It's cool if they do. And people would sit up on the risers and watch us practice.
That's kind of cool.
It was great. Yeah. And people, and there's other times, there's that bar now where they throw axes. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Okay. Well, we practiced there for a while.
Really?
And the front door this was before that, right before that.
Wait, while there was an axe bar?
Before.
Okay, good.
Right before.
So there's a bar where you can drink beer and also throw axes.
Yeah, there's one in Charlotte.
Why? Why is that a thing?
It's right beside the skate park, too. It's weird.
D-Town Brass, we practiced there right before all that really took hold. But people were down there milling around in that area, which was the DIY district. That's what they would call it at the time.
I forgot
that. Andy just called it the Wild Wild West because we could. Where should I park? And just like park on the sidewalk. It's the Wild Wild West.
That's true. Back then it was.
And
now
it didn't matter.
Park down there
you can't do that anymore. But so we would have
park there. Hardly.
We'd have the doors open rehearsing, and people would just stop in. So when we do play in Durham, it's kind of funny how just people are like, oh, it's D-Town Brass. This is my Durham band. Like, I kind of know these guys, or this guy made my fries, or that guy over there plays in the Wusses, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of neat to have this thing that's rooted here in town. And we play a couple times a year. Yeah. We haven't played this year yet. We probably will.
Well, everything's going to be shut down this year. There's no more play.
That is where we're at.
I think one thing that you didn't mention was the Psycho Rats.
Mike did ask me earlier some of my early stuff.
Yeah, so I've always joked with Bob, kind of half joking, about someday we're going to put together the Bob Wall box set.
Yeah.
We'll just get the archives together in a giant comprehensive box set. And I think, would it start with the Psycho Rats?
It would have to.
So the Psycho Rats be like very early.
The beginning. I started playing guitar when I was 13, I guess. That's the real beginning of how I do rock and roll, period.
Yeah.
And the Psycho Rats was the very first band that I ever played in with 2 other people.
You talking about 13. When did you get that Fender Strat?
Maybe a year later.
Okay.
The deal was, here's the
Sweet
deal.
ass.
It's a great guitar.
Yeah.
And I started taking music lessons when I was 13. I started taking lessons. It's kind of weird. This guy named John Hayes, who plays in the current version of Mother's Finest. And he's from Winston-Salem, but he lives in Holland. And I see him on Facebook now. And I didn't know where this guy was for years. But anyway, he was a great guitar teacher. And my dad told me basically, it's like, I think I played drums in the band at school. And he didn't want to hear that. He's like, he's reluctant to buy me a snare drum even. But he's like, if you learn how to play guitar, I'll buy you a nice guitar. What do you want? I'm like, Hendrix. I want a Fender Strat. Threw it out there. And I got good enough to about a year later. I got a Strat for Christmas when I was just turned 14.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it was a vintage Strat. I knew it then, but didn't really set in until many years later. Like, wow, did I look out. But when I was 15, I got together with one of my good friends and another friend. We started a band called the Psycho Rats, and it was a band. We made recordings. I don't think we wrote too many songs, but if there was the Bob Wall box set, it would begin with that. And we did Looks That Kill, and we did
Nice.
we did a really cool version of Machine Gun.
Oh yeah,
That is amazing. I mean, he's amazingly bad, but still, it's great. That was my high school band. We played the talent show in high school.
We did that.
We
did that. Well, Captain Bob's Pro Golf Groove Machine of Electric Love played the talent show.
We just wanted to see that in the program, and you still have that program, don't you?
I've still got the program.
Entered in the files,
Yeah.
And they wrote that out. Captain Bob's Pro Golf Groove Machine of Electric Love. First band that we ever played on stage with to an audience.
That's great.
Yeah.
Which was just Stylin on the Appleseeds. We
Yeah.
just didn't want to use that name.
No. Well, they're going to give us...
We wanted to make them say something absolutely ridiculous.
The guy to get up and...
Stylin Johnny Appleseeds wasn't ridiculous enough,
Yeah. But to see whatever teacher they had up there go, up next, Captain Bob's Pro Golf Groove Machine of Electric Love.
Made a logo for it and everything.
Good times.
The best thing about the Psycho Rats, we played the talent show, but before we went on, we played, but after us was all the football players got together and they asked me, like, can we borrow your guitar for this thing? I'm like, yeah, go ahead. Those guys got up and mimed the Super Bowl Shuffle.
Did they win? They win the talent show?
They got way more applause than we did. So there's a picture, and for all our efforts that day, the picture in the school paper was my guitar on the coach as those guys were singing Super Bowl Shuffle.
So those guys showed up to the talent show to do the Super Bowl Shuffle, and they didn't even have a guitar.
I don't think they thought about that.
They just
They're
wanted
like,
a prop.
I had one.
Yeah, but...
I had it. They're like, can we borrow that? I'm like, yeah.
That'll be great.
They put it on the coach, who didn't, that guy was...
Probably didn't even pretend like he was playing the whole time.
That guy it was the young coach, so he was dumb as a rock. And he was like, I can't show you over a microphone how dumb he looked, but he was like, with my guitar, like, damn it. And even at that point, I was like, this is what I'm going to have to deal with the rest of my life if I'm going to stay a musician. And I was not wrong about that. I was right. So I learned at a young age what it is.
Yep.
So, good. I don't care.
Which is funny because we were that age, we were in our teens, and we thought about being in a band. At first, you'd think, oh, everybody loves the guy in the band. This could be all kinds of girlfriends, and
Yeah.
and it's just that's just not the way it is.
It is not the way it is.
Rock and roll is just not as cool as people want to make it out to be.
No, not
to the
to
general
you know,
population.
not to the squares.
Yeah.
You ever notice in the movie of the heroes in a band, he usually walks away to the girl at some point, but the band keeps playing.
Yeah.
It's like, damn it. You don't ever get to walk away from the band. The band's playing. You don't get to dance.
So one thing that I've talked about with some people from around Charlotte is about how, like, even within North Carolina, the scenes don't cross over a whole lot.
Uh-huh.
Like, we don't really know what happens up here in the Triangle. We don't really know what happens in Wilmington or Asheville.
Right.
But with the Triangle, with Durham, Raleigh, and Chapel Hill being so close together, is there still a lot of separation? Because you've mentioned a lot of people and you talk about Durham, Chapel Hill, and Raleigh. You mentioned all three places.
Right.
But is it still a little bit separate, or is there a lot of crossover? Is it like one big scene?
As an observer, it seems to me there's always been a pretty healthy relationship between the Greensboro people and the Chapel Hill people.
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like looking back, and a lot of them.
I see that too, thinking back to the 90s.
Yeah, a lot of them. There was a kind of a healthy crossover, and a lot of them ended up moving here.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the cool thing about this area. It seems like a lot of people have done some time in the other cities.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing I definitely learned is when you're in Charlotte, if you're in Asheville, or if you're in Wilmington, and you're really into what you're doing, you're in those towns where you kind of take it for granted when you get here. Like when I first moved here, then I was like, oh man, there's something to do just about every night.
Yeah.
This is late 90s, and there were bands to see. And it wasn't always like that in Wilmington. Wilmington, there was, seldom something cool going on all the time. And those cities like that, it's nice when you're out there. You really get to work on something and then take it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nowadays, it's kind of, you look at the Archers. I mean, the Archers, I guess, had some Asheville leanings and were really considered here. And I didn't even know a lot of this, but there's some crossover between some of the places now.
Yeah.
Like the band Schooner now. Their drummer lives in Asheville.
Yeah.
And those guys find time to do stuff all the time, and when they do, it's great. And I don't think you necessarily have to live in the same place.
Yeah.
And even before I moved here, when I lived in Winston, so I'm from Winston, but I moved back there for a couple of years between Wilmington and here. And I found myself coming here a lot.
Yeah.
To see a show or to play with Dave and Dave. And
we used to come up here a lot from Boone to see shows.
Yeah.
That's one reason we moved here.
Well, I mean, when we used to come up here to see shows.
Yeah.
Even living in Charlotte, because a lot of bands didn't come to Charlotte.
Yeah.
So if we wanted to see the Cramps, we were coming to Chapel Hill.
Yeah. But from what I heard from the bathroom before you asked me, there was crossover between Raleigh, Durham, and Chapel Hill. Like, I think back in the day, I mean, we used to go to King's all the time and whatnot, but nobody came to Durham because there was nowhere to play.
Durham was different. It was kind of its own thing, and
there was nothing here.
There's not a lot here.
There was Ringside for a little while.
There was a time before Ringside. There was the Bullies basement. That was something before it was Bullies.
Yeah.
There were Durham bands. When I moved here, I knew that there were Durham bands, but they didn't seem to totally cross over into the Chapel Hill bands.
I mean, and Todd Goss was, always had a Durham address back then with Jettison Records and whatnot.
Well, who was it? Being from Wilmington and seeing the 7-inches back then, you'd see like the band Small.
Mm-hmm.
We always figure out Small must be really great, and I remember those small guys were like, we really kind of have trouble finding places to play, or getting on shows and all that. Yet they're on Alias and they're doing stuff. But and who was it? Paul Seiler was at King's been doing the cover up for about 20 years now, and he was talking about how it started in Raleigh, and he's like, and then all these Chapel Hill bands started getting involved. He's talking about some of us. But it's like, Paul played with some Chapel Hill people early on too. And
there's a cat on the microphone if you're hearing weird sounds.
I think in this area people like to, hey, I'm from Raleigh. Hey, I'm from Durham. And when Durham really started to become what it is now, people are like, yeah, I'm from Durham. But a lot of these people from Chapel Hill, Carver.
Yeah.
Spacelab was like that. We're a
We're a Chapel Hill band.
We're a Chapel Hill band. And even when Matt moved to Carrboro, we're a Chapel Hill band.
And then you moved to Durham.
And then I moved to Durham. Then I moved back.
Yeah.
And then Matt moved to Durham. The lines are really blurred now for sure.
Yeah.
But
Bob moved back and moved under us in a house.
Yeah.
We lived on the top floor and Bob lived on the bottom. And then we moved to Durham and now Bob lives right down the street.
Down the street.
Yeah, we control the street.
Yeah, this is our street. I think there's a healthy connection between all the...
Yeah,
I figured the cities being so close together, there'd be a little bit more... But like even back in the 90s when I was a little bit more aware of the scenes up here, I don't guess I really thought that much about it.
Well, there always was like the Raleigh. You know, Raleigh always
Raleigh
seemed like
always,
a little bit more metal.
Yeah, they were always more metal.
We call them Raleigh Rockers. The Raleigh
Yeah.
Rockers.
Yeah.
They definitely had the more rock and roll side of it. It was like I was talking very early in this about Goat Thrower.
Mm-hmm.
How the Raleigh metal guys did not.
Yeah.
They thought that Goat Thrower was taking a real piss on metal bands when that's as real as it gets.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, man, the house parties I went to in Raleigh were always way better than the house parties I went to in Chapel Hill.
Yeah.
It's true.
I mean, seeing Thor in someone's living room was just amazing.
Yeah.
You know, like.
It's still rolling. I'm just kind of recording some random stuff. You know?
It's all live, Bob.
It'll all get thrown in there somehow.
We're on the radio.
Well, not all of it.
Some guy in Montana's hearing us.
I agree.
These guys are great. Can Billy Wickersham call into this show?
Oh, you guys should do one with just Billy Wickersham.
Oh, God. I don't know if I can do it anymore.
So, was there anything that you're working on now that you want to plug or talk about?
Yes. These days, Erie Choir. Erie Choir did a record in... Just go ahead and throw this out. Erie Choir did a record in 2007 called Slider Awake, which was a lot of songs recorded up to that point. We also started work on a record around 2009 and finished it around 2017 called Old Rigs. Eric went to law school. He moved to New York for a while. He's getting his bearings. He had some kids and all that. And when he moved back here, we kind of fell right back into place, and that's where we're at now.
So not a Chinese democracy situation.
No.
They just got put on hold for a while.
I've heard these songs, and they're really good.
It's a good band.
They're really recorded well.
Thank you. It's a good band. It's James Hepler, Eric Roerig, and Jack Watson on bass. And we recorded that record was called Old Rigs, and that's a good record that came out about 2 or 3 years ago. And we're working on one right now. We've got a 7-inch that has 2 more songs and accompanying. It's like an EP. We recorded with Jerry Key last summer.
Yeah.
This is right after Jerry Key, as you know, Duck Key Studios, recorded all the Chapel Hill bands way back in the day. Had a fire in his studio about 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Pretty much damaged everything. A lot of not everything, but a lot of his stuff. A lot of smoke damage. But he rebuilt, and his place is nice. And he got his equipment back up and running again. It was a treat to work with Jerry. Jerry's always good to work with. He gets a good sound. We'll leave it at that. So we recorded with him last summer, and that will be coming out in May. Concurrently, at the same time, The Weeknd started recording last summer too. The Weeknd's had several records out since starting. We started in May of 2006, and I believe we have at least 5 total releases out. And we recorded with Nick Peterson last summer, and those we've got all the artwork and the test pressings back on that, and we'll also be releasing that in May.
Yeah.
And so that'll be a full length release. So those two releases. And actually, the crazy thing is we're doing it at the same show. So
Yeah.
and that will be with Blab School. It'll be opening that show, and that'll be at the Shadow Box down here. I think it's on May 14th, if I'm not mistaken. So that's the big thing on my horizon right now.
Yeah.
May 14th, unless the world collapses.
I was supposed to. I'm going to go ahead and plug this since this show is not happening tomorrow night. But the weekend was supposed to open for Versus tomorrow night with Sunny Slopes.
Yeah.
And I'm really sad that show is not happening because I'm a big fan of Versus. But hopefully that show will be rescheduled.
Yeah.
But I hopefully the Shadow Box is a good place to play.
Well, maybe we'll just, if we have to Mad Max it and Thunderdome it up.
If we just have to,
we'll still get the shows going.
If we have to invite
I
49
was already
people.
thinking about that. Like, if worse comes to worse, we're still going to find a way to play music.
Yeah.
It's 50 people, right? We can invite 48 people and give or take one. But yeah, the rock has to go on.
But
I like seeing people be creative.
I do too. But it is funny, like our parents are like, oh, the rock and roll now is awful and satanic and, full of, you know, bad lyrics and stuff. But it's like, now we're like, the younger kids' music is just too soft.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
I mean, I don't care for like what the lyrics are and some of the stuff that I've heard.
no, I know, but it's like,
it's like worse than anything that I ever listened to. But at the same time, it is soft.
It's soft, man. Like, why don't you kids, you know, get, I don't know, angry it up, man. I don't know. You got a lot to be angry about now.
Yeah. I don't really know what to add to that.
You're listening to the Old Man Show. Pass the whiskey.
This has been a Gabba Gabba Hunt Media production.